The unveiling of the Titan. The cold emptiness of space stretched endlessly, stars twinkling like distant eyes watching over a silent battlefield. Somewhere beyond the asteroid belt, hidden from prying eyes, a massive structure loomed in the shadows, a warship unlike any other. They called it Titan. For years, humanity had been preparing for this moment. The galaxy was dangerous, ruled by mighty alien empires that saw humans as weak newcomers. The Zerkai Dominion, one of the most ruthless factions, had already conquered dozens of species, forcing them into slavery or wiping them out completely. Now, their eyes had turned toward Earth. But humanity was not like the others. They would not bow. They would not break. In the heart of the United Earth Fleet's secret base, engineers, scientists, and military strategists had worked in silence, crafting the ultimate weapon. The Titan was not just another warship. It was a declaration, a message to the galaxy. Humanity is here to stay. A beast awakens. Deep inside the Titan, Captain Jonathan Reynolds stood on the bridge, his sharp eyes scanning the screens before him. The warship was a masterpiece, nearly 4 kilometers long, armored with the strongest materials humanity had ever created. Graviton shields, a new experimental technology, pulsed with energy around its hull, making it nearly invincible. The crew, thousands of men and women, stood at their stations, waiting. Today was the day they would bring Titan to life. "Commander, status report," Reynolds said, his voice steady. "All systems are online, Captain," Commander Vasquez replied. "Weapons charged. Shields stable. The reactor is at full power. We are ready." Reynolds nodded. Outside, in the darkness of space, drones and smaller ships hovered around Titan, recording every detail. The High Command on Earth was watching, waiting to see if their creation would live up to its name. Then the moment arrived. "Begin activation sequence," Reynolds ordered. From the ship's core, a deep hum began, a low vibration that spread through the metal walls, through the very bones of every crew member. Titan was waking up. Lights flickered to life across its massive body, energy flowing through its circuits like blood through veins. The engine roared, a monstrous sound that sent vibrations through the surrounding space. The warship moved for the first time, slowly rising from its hidden dock, casting a massive shadow over the asteroid belt below. It was no longer just a structure. It was a beast ready to strike, a galaxy on the brink. Far beyond, on the edge of human space, the Zerkai Dominion's fleet was already moving toward a defenseless human colony. They believed Earth was weak, its technology outdated, its people too fragile to resist. They were wrong. Titan's first mission was set: intercept the enemy. Show them what humanity was capable of. "Captain, incoming transmission from Admiral Hayes," Vasquez reported. Reynolds turned to the main screen. The face of Admiral Catherine Hayes, leader of the United Earth Fleet, appeared. Her expression was firm. "Captain Reynolds, it's time. We have intercepted communications from the Zerkai. They are moving toward Epsilon Prime. If they take that colony, it will be a massacre." Reynolds' jaw tightened. He already knew what needed to be done. "Titan is ready, Admiral," he said. "We will not let them take Epsilon Prime." A silence stretched between them. Then Hayes gave a single nod. "Engage at will, Captain. Show them what happens when they threaten humanity." The screen flickered off. The first move. "Set coordinates for Epsilon Prime," Reynolds ordered. "Prepare for jump." The bridge buzzed with activity. Titan's powerful engines charged, the energy core pulsing with raw power. Then, with a single command, the warship vanished into hyperspace. The hunt had begun. The invasion begins. The darkness of space stretched endlessly as Titan emerged from hyperspace, its massive hull glowing under the twin suns of the Epsilon Prime system. Below, the human colony floated in silence, unaware of the danger approaching. But the Zerkai Dominion was already here. Their warships, sleek, black, and deadly, moved in formation, surrounding the planet like vultures waiting for their prey to die. 30 enemy ships in total, a fleet strong enough to wipe out the colony within minutes. On the Titan's bridge, Captain Jonathan Reynolds stood tall, his expression unreadable. Around him, his crew worked quickly, preparing weapons and shields for battle. Enemy fleet detected, Captain. Commander Vasquez reported. They haven't seen us yet. We still have the element of surprise. Reynolds studied the screen in front of him. The Zerkai weren't expecting resistance. They thought this was just another easy conquest. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The first strike. Engage stealth mode. Bring us in closer, Reynolds ordered. Titan's advanced cloaking technology activated, bending light around its massive frame. The warship became a ghost, drifting unseen through space. The Zerkai ships continued their slow approach toward the planet. Their leader, General Xorvath, a towering reptilian creature, watched from the bridge of his flagship. His golden eyes gleamed with hunger. Prepare the orbital cannons, Xorvath growled. Burn the colony to the ground. Leave nothing alive. Titan inched closer, just a little more. Reynolds clenched his fist. Drop the cloak. Open fire. In an instant, Titan reappeared, a colossal shadow rising between the colony and its attackers. The Zerkai fleet froze in shock for a split second. Then, chaos erupted. The battle begins. Titan's graviton cannons roared, unleashing beams of energy that tore through the first enemy warship, splitting it in half like paper. The debris exploded, sending shockwaves rippling through space. The Zerkai panicked. What is that ship? One of their officers shouted. It's human, another screamed. Impossible. They don't have this kind of firepower. But they were wrong. Titan moved faster than any warship its size should have. Its eye-guided plasma torpedoes locked onto 5 enemy ships at once, sending fiery explosions through their hulls. More than a third of the fleet was destroyed in seconds. On the Titan's bridge, the crew worked with precision. Enemy forces in disarray, Captain Vasquez reported. Reynolds watched the battle unfold, his face unreadable. Good. Let's finish this. The enemy fights back. But the Zerkai were warriors. They wouldn't go down without a fight. Xorvath's voice boomed across the enemy fleet. You fools. It's only one ship. Surround it and fire everything. The remaining Zerkai ships turned toward Titan, their weapons glowing. Plasma cannons and missile salvos launched in unison, converging on the human warship. Incoming fire, Vasquez shouted. Raise shields. Brace for impact. Reynolds commanded. Titan's energy shields absorbed the first wave of attacks, but the second and third struck harder. The ship rocked violently, and warning sirens blared. Shields at 60%, hull integrity holding. Reynolds gritted his teeth. They couldn't afford to take too many hits. Redirect power to forward shields. Focus fire on their command ship. We take out Xorvath, and the rest will scatter. Titan's main cannons charged with a deafening hum. The crew held their breath. Then, with a blinding flash, they fired. The Zerkai flagship's shields collapsed instantly. The beam tore through the hull, splitting it into 2 massive burning halves. Silence filled the enemy comms. The Zerkai fleet panicked. Without their leader, their formation broke. Some ships turned to flee. Others continued to fire in desperation. The battle wasn't over yet. The last resort. One Zerkai warship at the back of the fleet launched something massive, a glowing object hurtling toward the colony below. The Titan's sensors screamed in warning. Captain, they fired a planet-killer missile. Reynolds felt a chill run down his spine. If that missile hit the colony, millions would die. Titan had to stop it. Full speed, chase that missile down. The warship's engines roared, breaking through the remnants of the Zerkai fleet. But the enemy wasn't done yet. Before Titan could reach the missile, Zerkai boarding ships latched onto its hull. The alarms blared. "Captain, we've been boarded." Reynolds turned to his crew, his eyes burning with determination. This battle wasn't just in space anymore. It was inside Titan itself. Unleashing the beast. The warship Titan shook violently as explosions echoed through its hull. Red warning lights flickered across the bridge, and alarms blared. The Zerkai boarding ships had latched onto its exterior, and hostile forces were already inside. On the bridge, Captain Jonathan Reynolds stayed calm, his sharp eyes scanning the battle reports. The enemy fleet was shattered, their commander dead. But it didn't matter, not if the planet-killer missile reached the colony below. Titan had seconds to react. "Status on that missile," Reynolds barked. Commander Vasquez, her face pale but determined, checked the sensors. "Still on course. Impact in 2 minutes. We won't reach it in time." Reynolds clenched his fist. He needed a solution. Fast. Then the ship rocked again. The real fight had just begun. The battle inside. The Zerkai warriors had breached 3 decks already. They weren't just any soldiers. They were Dreadborn, the elite of their kind. 7 feet tall, armored in exoskeletons, and carrying plasma blades that could cut through steel. Inside Titan's corridors, human Marines rushed into position. Automatic sentry turrets fired, cutting down some invaders, but the Dreadborn kept coming, their roars shaking the walls. Sergeant Eric Carter, leader of the defense teams, growled as he reloaded his rifle. "Hold the line. No alien bastards take this ship," he yelled. A massive Zerkai warrior lunged, its plasma blade swinging. Carter dodged, rolling to the side as the alien smashed through a steel barrier. He aimed his rifle straight at its face and fired. The alien fell with a screech, but more were coming. Carter activated his comms. "Bridge, we're outnumbered. We need reinforcements now." The captain's gambit. Reynolds heard the desperate call over the comms. His ship was under siege. The colony was moments from destruction, and time was running out. Then, an idea struck him. It was risky. It was insane. But it was the only way. He turned to Vasquez. "Are the AI combat drones still online?" She blinked, surprise. "Yes, but they're still untested in live combat." "Activate them and send them to support our Marines." Vasquez hesitated. Titan's AI war drones were powerful, but unpredictable. If they malfunctioned, they could turn against their own crew. But there was no other choice. Deploying drones now. Across the ship, hidden compartments opened, and hundreds of combat drones emerged, their red optics glowing. They flew straight into the battle, opening fire on the invading Dreadborn. The tide of battle shifted. Carter, pinned down behind cover, watched in shock as drones swarmed the Zerkai, shredding them with laser fire. "Dan, Captain, you really are full of surprises," he muttered. The chase. Meanwhile, Titan's engines burned hotter than ever, pushing the warship to its limits as it chased the missile. 50 seconds to impact. Vasquez warned. Reynolds' heart pounded. The missile was too fast, but Titan had one more trick up its sleeve. He turned to the weapons officer. "Fire the graviton cannon, lock onto the missile, and pull it back." The crew stared in shock. The graviton cannon wasn't made for stopping missiles. It was meant to tear ships apart. But there was no other option. "Do it," Reynolds commanded. The Titan's massive forward cannon hummed, glowing with blue energy. Then, boom. A pulse of gravitational force shot forward, latching onto the missile like an invisible hand grabbing a spear. The missile stopped mid-flight, caught in Titan's grip, but now it was unstable, shaking violently. "Captain, we need to get rid of it before it detonates," Vasquez yelled. Reynolds narrowed his eyes. Redirected, aimed straight at the last Zerkai warship. The Titan's engines strained, shifting the missile's trajectory. The final Zerkai ship tried to flee, but it was too late. The missile reversed course and slammed right into the enemy vessel. A blinding explosion filled the void. The last Zerkai ship was obliterated. Victory. At a cost. The bridge fell silent. The enemy fleet was gone. The colony was safe. The Titan had won. But the cost had been high. Inside the ship, human marines cleared the last of the Zerkai invaders, but hundreds of crew members lay dead. Carter leaned against the wall, breathing heavily, his armor scorched. He tapped his comm. "Gridge, we held the line. The ship is ours." On the bridge, Reynolds closed his eyes for a moment. Then he exhaled. "Good work, Sergeant." Vasquez turned to Reynolds. "Sir, we just sent a message to the galaxy. Humanity isn't weak. We are a force to be feared." Reynolds nodded. But deep down, he knew the war was far from over. The Zerkai wouldn't forget this loss, and the rest of the galaxy had just witnessed humanity's true power. The real war was only beginning. The aliens' desperate counterattack. The wreckage of the Zerkai fleet drifted in the cold void of space, burning fragments of their once mighty warships floating like dead embers. The Titan stood victorious, its massive frame looming over the battlefield. The colony below was safe. But the battle wasn't over. Not yet. Inside the Zerkai command vessel, a distress signal had already been sent before their destruction. Reinforcements were coming. And they were coming fast. The warning. On the Titan's bridge, Captain Jonathan Reynolds watched the tactical display. The enemy fleet was gone, the last warship destroyed by their own missile. But something felt wrong. The silence was unnatural. Commander Vasquez, still monitoring the scanners, suddenly tensed. "Captain, I'm picking up new contacts. Multiple hyperspace signatures." Reynolds' eyes narrowed. "Show me." On the main screen, red markers appeared, dozens of them. Incoming fleet, 48 ships, all Zerkai. ETA. 2 minutes. A second wave. The bridge crew stiffened. The first fleet had been a scouting force. The real Zerkai war fleet was now arriving, and the Titan was damaged, its crew exhausted, its shields barely holding. Reynolds knew the truth. They couldn't win this fight. "Get me the colony governor. Now," he ordered. A desperate plan. The screen flickered, showing Governor Elias Ward, the leader of Epsilon Prime. His face was pale, sweat on his forehead. "Captain, what's happening?" Ward asked, voice tense. "A second fleet is inbound, Governor. We can't hold them off. We need to evacuate your people. Now." Ward's eyes widened in horror. "We have nearly 1 million civilians here. We don't have enough transports." Reynolds tightened his jaw. The colony's ships were too slow. They'd be destroyed before escaping. But Titan had one last trick left. He turned to Vasquez. "How much power is left in the warp drive?" Vasquez hesitated. "Enough for one emergency jump, but not far." Reynolds exhaled. "That would have to do. Here's the plan. Governor, we're going to draw the enemy away. When they arrive, Titan will jump to a new location, making them chase us. That will give your people time to escape." Ward blinked in shock. "You're using yourselves as bait. That's suicide." Reynolds smirked. "Maybe. But if we don't, everyone here dies." Ward swallowed hard. Then, slowly, he nodded. "I'll begin evacuation procedures. Good luck, Captain." The screen went dark. "The trap is set. All hands, battle stations, prepare for emergency warp," Reynolds commanded. The crew rushed into action. Titan's engines groaned as emergency repairs were rushed, weapons reloaded. They would only get one shot at this. Then, they arrived. Outside, the void of space tore open as 48 Zerkai warships dropped out of hyperspace, their weapons glowing with rage and vengeance. At the center of the fleet, a massive dreadnought loomed, a ship 5 times the size of Titan, covered in thick armor and lined with planet-destroying cannons. This was the Zerkai High Command's warship, the Bloodfang, and at its helm stood Overlord Voxar, one of the most feared warlords in the galaxy. Inside the Bloodfang, Voxar's deep voice growled as he glared at the Titan on his tactical screen. One human warship, and it did all this. His golden eyes glowed with fury as he saw the wreckage of his fallen fleet. This insult will not be forgiven. Destroy them. The Zerkai fleet charge. The chase begins. The Titan's engines roared, propelling the massive warship forward at incredible speed. But the Zerkai ships were faster. Lasers and plasma rounds filled space, slamming into Titan's weakening shields. Shields at 20%. Hull damage increasing. Vasquez shouted. Titan weaved through enemy fire, dodging incoming torpedoes as the crew held on tight. Almost there, charging warp drive. But then, disaster. The Bloodfang fired its main cannon, a blast of pure destruction, glowing red like a dying star. It struck Titan's rear engines. The warship shook violently, and the lights on the bridge flickered. Captain, the warp drive is destabilizing. Vasquez yelled. Reynolds gritted his teeth. No, not now. Can we still jump? Vasquez hesitated, looking at the energy readouts. Yes, but we won't have control of where we land. It could throw us anywhere. Reynolds exhaled sharply. That was a risk they had to take. He grabbed the intercom, his voice echoing through the ship. All hands, braced for emergency warp. This is going to be rough. The leap into the unknown. The Titan's warp engines flared, burning the last of their power as the ship disappeared in a flash of blue light, just as a barrage of enemy fire passed through the space it once occupied. On the Bloodfang, Overlord Voxar slammed his fists onto his command console. Track them. Find that ship. I want them dead. But Titan was gone. Vanished into the unknown. And as the Zerkai fleet hovered in confusion, the human colony's evacuation ships began their escape. Titan had done its job. Now, the real question was, where had they ended up? Battle inside the warship. The Titan hurtled through the void, its engines flickering, its hull scarred from battle. The emergency warp jump had saved them from destruction, but at a cost. They were lost. The aftermath of the jump. On the bridge, Captain Jonathan Reynolds gripped the edge of his command chair as the ship trembled. Sparks flew from damaged control panels, and the emergency lights bathed the room in a deep red glow. Status, he barked. Commander Vasquez, still shaken, checked the readouts. We're alive, but we have no idea where we are. The nav system is offline. We could be anywhere in the galaxy. Reynolds exhaled sharply. This was bad. No communications, no reinforcements, no way to contact Earth. But it got worse. Captain, Vasquez hesitated. We still have a problem. She turned the screen toward him, and his blood ran cold. The Zerkai boarding parties were still on the ship. The battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. The war inside. Deck 7 was on fire. The Zerkai Dreadborn warriors had spread through 3 levels of the ship, cutting through human defenders with brutal efficiency. Blood stained the corridors, bodies lay motionless, and the air was filled with the sound of battle, plasma rifles, alien roars, human shouts. Sergeant Eric Carter, leading a squad of exhausted but determined Marines, pressed his back against a wall, reloading his rifle. His armor was dented, and his breath was heavy. Damn it, Captain. We didn't get rid of these bastards after all. A few feet away, a Zerkai warrior stomped forward, its plasma blade burning bright. Carter raised his rifle, but the alien was too fast. With a snarl, it lunged. Then a drone swooped in, blasting the Zerkai's head clean off. Carter blinked. Not gonna lie. I'm starting to like these things. The combat drones had proven their worth, cutting through the Zerkai in coordinated strikes. But it still wasn't enough. There were too many. And they were heading for the reactor. The race to the core. On the bridge, alarms blared again. Captain, the boarding party is trying to sabotage the main reactor. If they breach it, we all die. Vasquez shouted. Reynolds knew what that meant. If the reactor was breached, Titan would explode. Seal off the reactor chamber. Don't let them get through, he commanded. But the Zerkai were already there. A group of elite warriors, led by a massive Zerkai warlord, had broken into the lower decks. They were planting explosives along the reactor's containment walls. The Marines arrived just in time. Open fire, Carter roared. A brutal close-quarters battle erupted. The humans fought like hell, blasting Zerkai apart in the narrow corridors. The aliens, bigger and stronger, tore through the lines with plasma swords and sheer rage. Bodies fell on both sides. Then, the warlord, a towering 10-foot beast covered in blood-red armor, stepped forward. It looked at Carter, tilted its head, and let out a deep guttural laugh. Then it charged. Carter barely had time to react before the Zerkai slammed into him, sending him crashing into a wall. His armor cracked from the force, and he felt the breath leave his lungs. The warlord raised its plasma axe. This was it. Then, boom. The Titan shook violently, and the ceiling collapsed between them. Carter coughed, pushing debris off himself. He looked up. The warlord was gone, buried under tons of rubble. But there was no time to celebrate. The explosives were still armed. Captain, we need to disarm the bombs now. Seconds to disaster. Back on the bridge, Vasquez's hands flew across the controls. I'm trying to hack their detonation system, stalling them, but they're coded to a manual trigger. Someone has to do it by hand. Reynolds didn't hesitate. I'm on my way. The crew stared at him. Captain, that's suicide. We don't have time for debate. Reynolds grabbed a rifle and sprinted toward the reactor chamber. The final fight. Reynolds arrived at the reactor, his rifle smoking from previous kills. The massive energy core hummed behind thick glass, glowing blue and white, casting eerie shadows across the room. The last Zerkai warrior stood there, waiting. Not just any warrior. The warlord. Somehow the beast had survived the collapse. Now it held the detonator in its massive claw. Reynolds raised his weapon. Step away from the explosives. The warlord grinned, baring rows of serrated teeth. It spoke, voice deep and mocking. Foolish human. This ship will burn. Reynolds had seconds to act. The Zerkai's thumb moved toward the detonator. Bang. A single shot rang out. The Zerkai's skull exploded, and it collapsed, the detonator clattering to the floor, unpressed. Reynolds exhaled. Then he moved, disarming the last bomb. The ship was safe. Victory, but at a cost. Back on the bridge, Vasquez's voice came through the comms. Reactor secured. We're clear, Captain. Reynolds sank against the wall, exhausted. His uniform was torn, his face smeared with dust and blood. But they had won. For now. The bigger problem. Later, as the crew worked on repairs, Vasquez approached Reynolds. Sir, we still have no idea where we are. Reynolds sighed. No signals. No known star systems. Vasquez shook her head. Nothing. We're in completely uncharted space. Silence filled the bridge. They had escaped death, saved the colony, and destroyed a Zerkai fleet. But now, they were alone. In the middle of nowhere. And something out there was watching. The final stand. The Titan drifted in the silence of space, its hull scarred, its engines barely operational. The battle was over. The ship was secured, but the crew had little time to rest. Because now, they were lost. And something out there was watching. Ghosts in the dark. On the bridge, Captain Jonathan Reynolds sat in his command chair, staring at the empty void on the main screen. Commander Vasquez was running scans, but the readings made no sense. Still nothing, Captain. No nearby planets, no familiar star systems, no known trade routes. We're in completely uncharted space. Reynolds exhaled. That wasn't possible. The galaxy was massive, yes, but humanity had mapped a huge portion of it. And yet, here they were, adrift in a region that shouldn't exist. Then, something pinged on the radar. "Wait, I have movement." Vasquez's voice was quiet, cautious. Reynolds leaned forward. "What kind of movement?" Vasquez adjusted the settings. Then her face went pale. "Captain, something is out there." Reynolds frowned. "Clarify. What are we dealing with?" Vasquez hesitated, then turned the screen toward him. The radar showed dozens of small signals, moving around Titan in the dark, almost like they were circling. They were not Zerkai, and they were not friendly. Then, the lights flickered. "Sir, I think they're scanning us." The unknown threat. The bridge fell silent as the mysterious signals grew closer. Then, the comms crackled to life. A voice, deep, distorted, alien, echoed through the speakers. "Strange creatures, where have you come from? This is not your place." Asterisk, asterisk. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Reynolds narrowed his eyes. "Identify yourselves. This is the UES Titan of the United Earth Fleet. We come in peace." For a moment, silence. Then, laughter. Dark, eerie, unnatural. "Peace. There is no peace here. Only those who survive." Then, the first attack hit. The ambush. The Titan rocked violently as a massive energy blast struck its hull. The shields flared, struggling to absorb the impact. "We're under attack," Vasquez shouted. The main screen flickered, and for the first time, they saw their enemy. Ships, dark, jagged, predatory. Unlike anything in human records, their hulls were covered in strange organic armor, almost as if they were alive. "Who the hell are these guys?" one of the officers yelled. Reynolds didn't have time to answer. The enemy ship swarmed Titan, moving with unnatural speed. Shields down to 40%. Hull breaches on decks 12 and 15. Reynolds gritted his teeth. Titan was already weakened. They couldn't take much more. But he refused to die here. "All weapons, fire at will." Titan's counterattack. The Titan's cannons roared, blasting the enemy ships with graviton pulses and plasma torpedoes. The first few exploded, shattering into pieces. But the rest kept coming. Then, one of the enemy ships latched onto Titan, drilling into its hull. "Boarders inbound," Vasquez yelled. Reynolds clenched his fists. "Not again." "Prepare to repel invaders." Across the ship, alarms blared. Human Marines rushed to defensive positions, setting up barricades. Then the doors burst open, and the true horror was revealed. The creatures that stepped through were not like the Zerkai. They were tall, skeletal, with sharp claws and glowing eyes, moving in a jerky, unnatural way. Their flesh pulsed, shifting as if it wasn't solid. And worst of all, they didn't make a sound. They simply stared. Then they attacked. The last stand. The corridors erupted into chaos. Human Marines opened fire, but the creatures moved too fast, dodging bullets, tearing through the front lines. Sergeant Carter, already wounded from the last battle, fought like a man possessed. His rifle blazed, cutting down two of the creatures. But a third lunged at him, claws piercing his shoulder. He screamed, falling to the ground. Reynolds' voice came over the comms. "Hold the line. We can't let them reach the bridge." But Carter knew the truth. They were losing. "Captain, we need a miracle. The last resort." On the bridge, Reynolds made a decision. A dangerous one. He turned to Vasquez. "How much power do we have left in the reactor?" She hesitated. "Enough for one last blast. But Captain, if we use it, we won't have enough energy to jump again. We'll be completely stranded." Reynolds stared at the main screen. The enemy ships kept coming. The creatures kept pushing forward. If they didn't do this, Titan would fall. He made his choice. Divert all power to the main cannon. Target the enemy fleet. Vasquez swallowed hard. Then she nodded. The Titan's core pulsed, drawing in every last drop of energy. The ship groaned, its damaged systems barely holding together. Cannon charged, Captain. Reynolds took a breath. Then, fire. The supernova strike. The Titan's main cannon erupted, sending out a wave of pure destruction. It ripped through the enemy fleet, vaporizing their ships in an instant. The creatures inside Titan screamed, their bodies disintegrating as the energy pulse swept through the corridors. Then, silence. The enemy was gone. But Titan was drifting, completely powerless, and alone. Victory at a cost. The Titan drifted in the cold void of space, its once mighty engines now silent, its power reserves completely drained. The final blast from the superweapon had wiped out the unknown enemy, but now the warship was stranded, alone, powerless, and vulnerable. Inside, the crew fought to keep the ship alive. The aftermath. On the bridge, Captain Jonathan Reynolds gripped the armrests of his chair, his face illuminated by the dim emergency lights. The battle was won, but at what cost? Status report, he ordered, his voice quieter than usual. Commander Vasquez, covered in soot and sweat, wiped blood from her forehead as she checked the controls. We have no main power. The superweapon drained everything. Life support is running on emergency backup. Shields are gone. Engines are offline. She hesitated before adding, if we don't restore power soon, we won't survive. Reynolds nodded grimly. The entire crew had pushed beyond their limits. Many were injured, some dead. The ship was on the brink of failure. But giving up wasn't an option. How long until we completely lose life support? Vasquez checked the readings. We have about 6 hours. After that, we start suffocating. Reynolds exhaled sharply. 6 hours. That was all the time they had left. Then the comms crackled. It was Sergeant Carter, still holding his wounded shoulder. His voice was weak but determined. Captain, you might want to get down here. We found something. The hidden discovery. Reynolds and Vasquez hurried down the damaged corridors, passing wounded crew members receiving medical aid. Sparks flickered from broken panels, and the once pristine steel walls were now scorched from battle. They reached the lower engineering bay, where Carter and his Marines had gathered around. Something strange. It was a large metallic crate, alien in design. The strange symbols carved into its surface glowed faintly. What is it? Reynolds asked. Carter shook his head. No idea. One of those alien bastards was carrying it when they died. Whatever's inside, they were protecting it. Reynolds exchanged a glance with Vasquez. Could it be a power source, a weapon, a trap? There was only one way to find out. Open it. The Marines hesitated, then pried open the crate. Inside, a strange pulsating device hummed softly, giving off a faint energy signature. Vasquez's eyes widened. Captain, this thing is emitting power. It might be what we need to jumpstart the Titan's core. Reynolds didn't hesitate. Get it to engineering. If there's even a chance it can restore power, we take it. The final gamble. In the reactor chamber, engineers worked fast, connecting the alien power core to Titan's main systems. Vasquez stood over the control panel, her fingers hovering over the activation switch. Captain, if this thing overloads the core, it could destroy the ship. Reynolds looked around at his crew, his people. If they did nothing, they would die anyway. Do it. Vasquez nodded. Then she pressed the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Titan trembled. The lights flickered, consoles flared to life, and the main reactor let out a deep hum, its energy slowly returning. The crew held their breath. Then Vasquez checked the readings, and her eyes widened in shock. Captain, the power levels are off the charts. This thing isn't just restoring energy, it's enhancing the entire ship. Reynolds' heart pounded. How much enhancement? Vasquez hesitated. If the readings are correct, we're now stronger than we were before. Faster, more powerful. The realization hit them all at once. The Titan had just evolved, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The road ahead. With power restored, Titan's engines roared back to life, its damaged systems slowly repairing themselves. The unknown enemy was defeated, but they would not be the last. Somewhere out there, the Zerkai Dominion was still hunting them. The mystery of this unknown region remained unsolved. But one thing was certain. Titan was no longer just a warship. It was an unstoppable force, and humanity's greatest weapon had only just begun its journey. The end, for now.